We do not mix with humans. The alpha's voice was a low, commanding rumble that seemed to shake the very earth beneath Sarah's feet. It was a rule, a law, an unyielding truth that had been passed down for generations. She stood in the packed compound, a single face in a sea of her own kind, and felt a cold loneliness settle in her bones. This was her home, her family, her legacy, and it was suffocating her. The air was thick with the scent of pine, damp earth, and the raw, musky smell of their pack. She could feel their power, a shared, silent hum that ran through the group like an electric current. For her family, this was a feeling of profound safety and belonging. For Sarah, it felt like an unbreakable chain. She forced a small, polite smile, a mask she had perfected over the years, and a deep sense of betrayal of her own true self washed over her. Her father, a man whose presence was as heavy as his title, looked at her, and his eyes, a sharp, unblinking yellow, were a physical weight on her shoulders. He saw her not as his daughter but as the future of the pack, the one who would carry on his legacy. She was the one who would lead them, the one who would be a mother to the next generation of werewolves. He saw a perfect, unblemished reflection of his own power, and the thought of it was a suffocating weight on her chest. He continued his speech, his words a hard, unyielding thing. He spoke of their ancient traditions, of their bloodline, and of the importance of keeping their kind pure. He saw humans as weak and fragile, a threat to their way of life. But Sarah knew a different world, a world she had only ever glimpsed from the sidelines. A world of art and music and friendship, a world she was desperate to be a part of. She yearned for a life where she could make her own choices, a life far from the rules and traditions that bound her. She was a werewolf and her blood was a part of this pack, but her soul was somewhere else entirely. She was trapped, a prisoner of a legacy she never asked for. A legacy that saw her as a tool, a perfect vessel to continue the bloodline. She longed for an escape, a way to breathe freely, a way to be herself. She had no idea that a simple coffee shop in a small, quiet town was about to be her salvation. Chapter 1. The drive from the pack's sprawling, isolated compound was a physical and emotional journey for Sarah. As her beat-up sedan rattled over the gravel road, the world outside her window shifted. The dense, wild forest that was their territory, filled with the primal sense of earth and pack, slowly gave way to the tidy fields and quiet, winding roads of human civilization. With every mile, the knot of tension in her shoulders began to loosen. The air, which at home was thick with the constant unspoken hum of 100 werewolves on high alert, became simple and clean, carrying only the scent of rain and damp asphalt. She had told her father she was on a supply run, a necessary lie. He didn't question her too closely, too preoccupied with the constant vigilance of leading their pack. He saw her as his heir, a reflection of his own power, a perfect, unblemished vessel to carry on the bloodline. But lately her perfect facade felt more like a flimsy mask, and her longing for a life of her own was a constant, nagging ache in her chest. Her salvation came in the form of a small, charming town she had only ever seen from a distance. The name Havenwood seemed too perfect, a beacon of peace in her chaotic life. Her destination, the daily grind, was tucked on a quiet side street, its windows steamed with the warmth from inside. A small, handcrafted sign hung over the door, painted with the image of a coffee bean. The moment she stepped through the door, a little bell jingled, and the scent of roasted coffee and cinnamon hit her like a warm hug. It was a world away from the constant low-level anxiety of the pack. The shop was small but felt vast, filled with comfortable, mismatched armchairs and the quiet hum of a coffee machine. A small, ancient dog with graying fur was sleeping in a sunbeam on the hardwood floor. In a corner, an old woman with a kind face was knitting, her needles making a soft, rhythmic click-clack sound. Everything was simple, normal. Sarah felt a profound sense of relief wash over her. Here her senses, always on high alert for the slightest shift in the air, the smallest change in a scent, had nothing to do. Her mind, so used to the constant chatter of pack instincts, was finally blessedly quiet. Behind the counter was David. He was a gentle-looking man with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. His hair was a little long, falling just over his eyes, and his hands as he carefully steamed milk were steady and calm. He wasn't loud or demanding. He wasn't coiled with a quiet power like the men she knew. He was just peaceful. He looked up and his smile became genuine. "Welcome to the daily grind. First time in." Sarah's mouth went a little dry. Her mind, so used to sensing the subtle shifts in emotion and scent of her pack, was completely lost in this human space. Yeah. Just passing through." She felt a little silly at the lie, but he just nodded easily as if he believed her. "Well, welcome. What can I get for you?" She fumbled with the menu, her fingers feeling clumsy. "Just a coffee. Black." She figured a plain coffee was the least complicated thing she could order. While he prepared her drink, she looked around the shop again, taking it all in. She had always felt like a tourist in the human world, but this place felt different. It felt like a home she didn't know she was missing. He handed her the coffee and their fingers brushed. A small, surprising jolt went through her. It wasn't the powerful electric jolt she was used to from her own kind, the kind that screamed pack and loyalty. This was soft and warm, like a gentle, steady light. "There you go," he said, his smile still there, genuine and welcoming. She paid, her mind still a little blank from the sudden relief. As she turned to leave, she noticed a small potted plant on the counter. "That's a nice one," she said, her voice softer than she'd meant it to be. "The leaves are beautiful." David's face lit up. "Thanks. My grandmother gave it to me. She said plants need a peaceful place to grow." She was right. His words struck her. A peaceful place. That's exactly what this was. That's exactly what she needed. She took her coffee and found a corner seat by the window, but she couldn't stop looking at him. He was a human, a gentle soul, and he was everything her pack believed to be weak. Yet in his presence she felt a strength she had never known. She finished her coffee, her heart a little lighter than it had been in a long time. She knew she would be back. Her father might think she was on a supply run, but she was really on an escape run. And her escape had a name. David. And a simple, inviting coffee shop. She couldn't stop thinking about the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. She felt a connection that went beyond words. He had to come back. She had to know more about this man who seemed so different, so calm, so utterly, perfectly human. Her instincts, always telling her to be on alert, were now telling her to stay. To get closer. And for the first time in her life she was going to listen to them. She was going to return to the town, to the coffee shop, to the man who was everything she was not. And she knew with a certainty that went beyond words, that her life was about to change. Chapter 2. Sarah found herself back at the daily grind the very next day. And the day after that. What had started as a simple escape had quickly morphed into a vital part of her routine. The coffee shop, with its soft light and warm scents, was her sanctuary, and David was its gentle keeper. In the span of a single week, their polite small talk had deepened into quiet, heartfelt conversations. He spoke of his love for the simple life, of the small joys he found in the town, and of his plans for the coffee shop. She, in turn, found herself confiding in him in ways she hadn't confided in anyone, not even her closest pack mates. She spoke about her exhaustion, her feeling of being pulled in two directions, of a deep-seated loneliness she couldn't explain. She just left out the part about the massive wolf pack, the constant pressure, and the fact that the two directions were quiet human life and feral ancient tradition. The lie had begun to grow, an elaborate, tangled web of excuses. To her father, her daily trips to town were now part of an ongoing scent-tracking exercise. She told him she was learning to distinguish the smells of different human communities to better understand their movements. Her father, a creature of primal instincts, found this to be a sound, if somewhat bizarre, plan. To her pack mates, the lie was a bit more absurd. She told them she had a new hobby, Extreme Birdwatching. It was a perfect cover story. It explained her solo excursions and her need for quiet. It also led to some truly ridiculous scenarios. One afternoon, a younger pack member named Marcus, a strapping young werewolf with a loud bark and an even louder laugh, cornered her in the woods. "Hey Sarah," he said, his smile a wide, easy thing. "Going to your bird-watching thing? Mind if I join you? I could use some time away from everything." Sarah's heart did a panicked little flip. Marcus, with his enhanced sight and sound, would see that she was a terrible bird watcher in about 3 seconds. He had to think fast. "Oh no, you can't," she said a little too quickly. "It's a very specific kind of bird watching. It's silent. We don't speak. 4 hours. It's a meditation. A deep, soulful silence. You wouldn't understand." Marcus's smile faltered. "Oh, right. Silent. Well, good luck with that then." He backed away slowly, looking thoroughly confused and a little frightened. The story worked, but the stress of keeping it all straight was starting to get to her. The most difficult part of her double life, however, was managing her instincts. She was a werewolf, and her body was a finely tuned machine, a testament to generations of strength and speed. But in David's human world, she had to constantly dull her senses, to slow her movements. It was exhausting. One afternoon, a small stack of books on the counter teetered precariously, about to fall and crash onto the floor. In a split second, before anyone could even react, Sarah's hand shot out and caught them, her reflexes faster than a blink. David's eyes widened. "Wow, that was fast." "Oh, I'm just a little clumsy," she said, her cheeks flushing. "I'm a klutz. I have to be fast to catch things before I break them." She added a ridiculous, exaggerated wobble to her step and nearly tripped over her own feet to sell the lie. David laughed, a genuine warm sound, and the moment passed, but it left her shaken. She was losing control, and it was becoming harder to pretend to be a simple, ordinary human. Her father, the alpha, was a creature of instinct. He had begun to notice a change in her scent. It was no longer the deep, familiar scent of pack and earth. It was something else, something softer with a hint of roasted coffee and something that smelled like clean laundry and home. He confronted her one evening as she was getting ready to leave. "Your scent is changing," he said, his voice low and serious. "What is it?" Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. He had to be clever. She had to make him believe her. "Oh, that," she said, trying to sound casual. "It's the new human scent masking plants I've been studying. They're a hybrid. I've been working on a new kind of natural camouflage. It's for the good of the pack." She held up a small leafy branch she'd picked up on her way in, a prop for her lie. Her father, a traditionalist who found the human world baffling, just grunted, but she knew his suspicion had been planted. The lies were becoming her life. Her life with David was a beautiful secret, a gentle romance that felt like a breath of fresh air. But it was built on a lie that was getting bigger and more complex every day. She found herself longing for the peace of his coffee shop, for the comfort of his presence, and for the simplicity of his human world. But every time she was with him, a part of her was on high alert. A part of her was a werewolf watching the door, her senses constantly scanning for a threat that wasn't there. The two worlds, her pack and her human sanctuary, were on a collision course. Her father and the pack were growing more suspicious, and the lies were becoming more elaborate. But she couldn't stop. She couldn't give up on the peaceful life she was just beginning to find. The risk was great, but the reward was greater. She knew with a certainty that went beyond words that she was in too deep to turn back now. The next time she returned to David's coffee shop, it would not be a simple escape. It would be a point of no return. Chapter 3. The peaceful world Sarah had built for herself was beginning to crack. Every time she left David's coffee shop, the feeling of quiet happiness was immediately replaced by a cold dread. The scent of roasted coffee and the simple scent of David himself, A mixture of soap and something that smelled like home clung to her. And the alpha, her father, noticed everything. He was a creature of instinct and tradition, a man who ruled with his senses. He didn't need words to know something was wrong. The first hint of his suspicion came in the form of a low growl. He found her in the main hall of the pack house, a place of constant motion and loud voices. He didn't shout. He didn't command. He simply stood in front of her, his nostrils flaring. "Your scent," he said, his voice a low rumble. "It is diluted." Confused. Sarah's heart pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She had prepared for this, but the lie felt flimsy in the face of his powerful presence. "Oh, that," she said, forcing a casual tone. "It's the new human scent masking plants I've been studying. I've been working on a new kind of natural camouflage for our patrols." He just stared at her, his sharp eyes seeing right through her lie. He was a werewolf, a powerful alpha, and she was his daughter. He knew her every tell, every lie she had ever told. The silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Finally he gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Good," he said, his voice a cold thing that sent a shiver down her spine. "For the good of the pack." But she knew his words were a warning. He was watching her, and her simple, fragile lie was hanging by a thread. Her father wasn't the only one to take notice. Her packmates, fueled by their ingrained distrust of humans and their loyalty to the alpha, began their own covert meddling. A young packmate named Leo, a loud and boisterous werewolf who was always trying to prove his worth to the alpha, was the first to try and sabotage her. He accidentally showed up at the daily grind one afternoon, a smug look on his face. He stood in the middle of the quiet coffee shop, his large body a sharp contrast to the gentle atmosphere. He ordered a coffee and then, in a voice that was far too loud for the space, he said, "So, Sarah, what's this new human hobby of yours? Still playing in the woods with the little birds?" His words were a clear provocation, a challenge, a subtle way of reminding her that she belonged to them, not to the humans. David, who was wiping a table nearby, looked at them, a small frown on his face. He had no idea what was happening, but he knew something was wrong. Sarah's wolf instincts flared. She wanted to snarl at Leo to put him in his place. But she couldn't. She was in David's sanctuary, in his safe, quiet world. She forced a bright, fake smile. "Leo, so nice of you to join me," she said, her voice dripping with a sweetness that didn't feel real. "He's my very intense cousin," she said to David, trying to make it a joke. "He gets a little too into our family hobbies." Leo, not sensing the sarcasm, puffed out his chest and grinned. "That's right. We take our hobbies very seriously." He spent the rest of his time in the shop trying to intimidate David with loud, intimidating questions about the town's security and the strength of the local police. David, ever the gentle soul, answered all his questions with a quiet politeness that only seemed to make Leo more frustrated. Sarah had to physically drag Leo out of the shop, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. Her lies were becoming more elaborate and her stress was mounting. The scent she was so desperate to hide from her father was now becoming a weapon in the hands of her packmates. Another packmate, a young wolf named Tessa who had always been a little jealous of her standing with the alpha, tried a different tactic. She cornered Sarah on the way back to the compound, a sly look on her face. "I heard you're spending a lot of time in town," she said, her voice a low purr. "I hope you're being careful, Sarah. You know what they say about humans. They're fragile. A strong wolf could hurt one without even trying." The words were a clear, veiled threat. It was a warning. The pack was watching and they were ready to move. Sarah felt her inner wolf snarl. This was her life, her secret, her choice. They had no right to interfere. The final blow came from her father. He called her into his office, a dark, solemn room filled with the ancient scents of generations of alphas. He didn't beat around the bush. "I know you are hiding something, Sarah." His voice was low and it carried the weight of his title. "Your scent is confusing. Your mind is elsewhere. Your loyalties are divided. Sarah felt a surge of panic. He didn't know about David. Not yet. But he was so close. She tried to lie, to tell him it was all for the pack, that her love for her family was not in question. But her words fell flat. He knew. He could feel her betrayal, a betrayal not of action but of heart. You have a duty to this pack, Sarah, he said, his voice hard. You are my daughter. You are a leader. You will not waste your time on human follies. You will not betray your blood. He gave her a final, cold command. Your town errands are over. From now on, you will not leave the compound without my permission. His words were a hammer blow. He had cut her off. He had taken away her only escape, her only sanctuary. He had put her on lockdown, a prisoner in her own home. The war she had been so desperately trying to keep separate was now on her doorstep. Her father, the powerful alpha she loved and feared, was now a direct barrier between her and the quiet, peaceful life she had found with David. She had to make a choice. And she had no idea what she was going to do. The next time she saw David, it would not be a secret. It would be an act of open rebellion. And she knew with a certainty that went beyond words, that she would have to face the consequences. Chapter 4. The pack compound, which for years had been a place of comfort and belonging, now felt like a prison. Her father's command, "You will not leave the compound without my permission," was a physical barrier, a wall between her and the quiet, peaceful life she had found in Havenwood. Every day was a fight against herself. Her instincts, always telling her to be on high alert, were now screaming at her to run, to go to David. But she couldn't. She was trapped. The days were an endless cycle of forced pack duties. She was made to sit in on meetings she didn't care about, to run patrols with pack mates she now found suffocating. The air, once just the familiar smell of her family, now smelled of her confinement. Her father was a constant, looming presence, watching her every move. He didn't need to say a word. His silent suspicion was a pressure she could feel in her bones. The weight of his expectations was heavier than ever. Her pack mates, sensing her father's disapproval, began to meddle in their own way. They would constantly try to engage her in pack activities, their gestures of friendship feeling more like tests of loyalty. Marcus, the same pack mate from before, found her near the main clearing one afternoon, holding a small, worn baseball. "Hey, Sarah," he said, his voice a low, friendly rumble. "Throw me a ball?" His tone was easy, but his eyes were a question. He wanted to see if she would play a human game with him. Sarah knew this was a test. A subtle way of reminding her of her place. She forced a smile and threw the ball. It was an easy throw, but her wolf instincts were screaming at her to throw it harder, faster, with a power that would have shattered his hand. She fought the urge, forcing her body to move with a human's grace. He caught it, and a small, disappointed frown touched his lips. He knew she was holding back. He knew something was wrong. Another pack mate, a young wolf named Ethan who was a little too eager to please the alpha, tried a different tactic. He cornered her in the library, a small room filled with ancient books and a musty smell. "I heard you're not going to town anymore," he said, his voice a sly purr. "That's good. It's not a place for us. They're fragile. We're not." He was telling her that she didn't belong with the humans, that she belonged here with them. Sarah felt a surge of cold fury. They had no right to tell her what to do. They had no right to tell her who she was. But the most difficult part of her confinement was the war being waged inside her. Her werewolf instincts, which had always been a quiet background hum, were now screaming at her. She could smell David's scent on the wind, a faint, tantalizing scent of coffee and soap. Her wolf, a wild, untamed thing that was a part of her soul, was begging her to go to him. To find him. To protect him. The urge was so strong, so powerful, that she had to clench her fists to stop herself from running. One afternoon the urge became almost unbearable. She was standing on the edge of the compound, her eyes fixed on the distant road that led to town. She got a strange feeling, a sudden, powerful sense of David being in trouble. It wasn't a wolf sense, not really. It was a human feeling, a deep, gnawing anxiety that something was wrong. Her body, however, responded with a primal, animalistic need to run to him. She wanted to shift, to feel the freedom of the wolf, to run to him with a speed that would have made a car look slow. But she couldn't. She was trapped. The internal war was exhausting. She was torn between her duty to the pack and her love for David. She had always prided herself on being a woman of control, of logic, but now her entire life was spiraling out of control. Her father's suspicion was a weight on her shoulders. Her pack mates' meddling was a constant source of frustration, and her love for David was a powerful, beautiful thing that was tearing her apart. She finally reached a breaking point. She was in her room, a prisoner in her own home, and she realized she couldn't live like this anymore. She couldn't keep lying. She couldn't keep fighting a war on two fronts. She had to make a choice. A final, definitive choice. She looked out her window at the setting sun casting long shadows over the trees. She knew what she had to do. She had to go to him. She had to break her father's rules. She had to risk everything. She was no longer a child who was afraid of her father's anger. She was a woman who was in love, and she was going to fight for the man she loved. She would leave the compound and she would go to the town. She didn't know what would happen when she got there. She didn't know how her father would react. But she knew that she had to take a chance. For herself. For David. And for the love that was proving to be stronger than any rule, any tradition, any pack. The next time she saw David, it would not be a secret. It would be an act of open rebellion. And she knew with a certainty that went beyond words, that she would have to face the consequences. Chapter 5. The old sedan rattled and groaned as Sarah drove it away from the pack compound, a journey she was not supposed to take. The act of rebellion, of defying her father's direct command, filled her with a thrilling mixture of fear and exhilarating freedom. The air, which had felt so heavy with expectation just moments ago, now tasted of open road and a future she was desperate to claim. Her heart pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs, but it was not from fear. It was from the undeniable pull of her destination, David. She met him at the town fair, a loud and colorful explosion of sights and sounds. The air was thick with the scent of fried dough, popcorn, and cotton candy. It was a chaotic symphony of human normalcy, and Sarah found herself in a state of sensory overload. Her wolf instincts, honed for the quiet of the forest, were on high alert. The crowds, the flashing lights, the blaring music. It was all too much. But David was a calming presence at her side, his hand warm in hers. His gentle smile was a tether to a world she longed to be a part of. They walked through the fairgrounds, their shoulders brushing. He bought her a massive, absurdly large cotton candy, and she laughed, a full, genuine sound that felt alien to her own ears. It was all so simple and normal, a world away from the constant low-level anxiety of the pack. She watched him play a ridiculous carnival game, trying to throw a basketball into a hoop. He was terrible at it, his face scrunched up in a comical mixture of concentration and frustration. She found herself laughing, a free and easy sound. He lost, and his shoulders slumped in a playful defeat. "I swear," he said, shaking his head. "The rim is too tight. They must have rigged it." "I think your form is a little off," she said, teasing him. She took the ball from his hands, the smooth, worn leather feeling strange in her grasp. Her body, coiled with a quiet power, was screaming at her to throw it with the grace and strength she was born with. She fought the urge, forcing herself to move like a human, her throw a little wobbly. It missed the hoop by a mile. She shrugged and laughed. "See? I'm not a natural either." He just smiled, a soft, loving expression in his eyes. They were in line for a ride, a spinning teacup that would surely make her dizzy, when her wolf instincts screamed at her. The familiar sense of her pack hit her like a physical blow. Her father. They were here. Panic, hot and sharp, shot through her veins. She scanned the crowd, her eyes darting through the throngs of people. There, near the shooting gallery, was her father, his eyes scanning the crowd with a fierce intensity. With him were two of her pack mates, Marcus and Tessa, their faces a mixture of boredom and suspicion. They hadn't seen her yet. She had to act fast. She gripped David's hand, her fingers tightening, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. "David," she said, her voice a low, urgent whisper. "We have to go. Right now." He saw the fear in her eyes and didn't question it. "What is it?" he asked, his voice low and concerned. "Family," she said, the lie a bitter taste in her mouth. They're not a big fan of public places. They don't know I'm here. We have to leave." But it was too late. Marcus, his wolf instincts on high alert, caught her scent. He turned his head, his eyes locked on her. "Sarah," he shouted, his voice a surprised, loud boom. Panic, cold and sharp, shot through her. He had to get out of there. The scent of her father's fury was now a heavy, suffocating thing in the air. "I'm so sorry," she said to David, pulling him with her. "We have to go." She ran, pulling him with her through the crowd, her body moving with a speed that was too fast for a human. She heard Marcus's voice shouting her name, closer now. Her wolf instincts were screaming at her. A sense of shame, of being exposed, washed over her. She couldn't shift. Not here. Not in front of all these people. Not in front of David. They were running past the Ferris wheel, its bright, flashing lights a blinding blur of color, when she heard a cry. A little girl had dropped her stuffed bear, and it was rolling toward the tracks of a small train that ran around the fairgrounds. Her wolf instincts, her primal need to protect, took over. She couldn't stop. She couldn't leave the girl to a potentially dangerous situation. She let go of David's hand, her body moving with a speed that was impossible. She slid to a stop, her hand reaching for the bear just as the train was about to hit it. She grabbed the stuffed animal, her fingers a blur, and gave it a small, hard tug. The bear was free, but her hand, moving with a strength she had forgotten, ripped the arm clean off. She stood there, a torn stuffed bear in her hand, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. She saw David's face, his eyes wide with a mix of shock and confusion. He had seen her speed. He had seen her strength. He knew something was terribly wrong. "Oh, no," she said, her voice a small, panicked whisper. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." She thrust the torn bear at the little girl, her cheeks burning with a deep, humiliating shame. David was at her side in an instant, his face a mask of concern. "Sarah, what was that?" he asked, his voice low. He had to think fast. The lies were a part of her now. They were a part of her life. I just have a lot of nervous energy," she said, the lie feeling thin and ridiculous. I go to the gym. A lot. I have a lot of energy. And I'm a little clumsy. I get excited. I'm sorry." He was a terrible liar. Her body was a testament to her strength, her mind was a whirlwind of panic, and her excuse was a lie she knew he would see right through. But David, ever the kind soul, just looked at her, his expression softening. He didn't question her. He just took her hand in his, a quiet comfort that felt like a lifeline. "It's okay," he said, his voice soft. "It's okay. Let's just go." She felt a wave of profound relief and a crushing sense of guilt. He had accepted her flimsy lie. He had chosen to believe her. But she knew in her heart that her secret was too big, too dangerous. He had to make a choice. A final, definitive choice. The fear she felt was a powerful, beautiful thing. She was risking her life for this man, and she knew she couldn't keep living like this. The next time she saw David, it would not be a secret. It would be an act of open rebellion. And she knew with a certainty that went beyond words, that she would have to face the consequences. Chapter 6. The air in the pack compound was heavy and still. It was the kind of quiet that precedes a storm, a silence that felt more terrifying than any roar. Sarah stepped out of her car, the scent of fear, her own, thick in the air. Her heart was a tangled mess of guilt and defiance from her close call at the fair. The lies she had used to protect herself, and David felt thin and flimsy in this place. She knew her father would be waiting. He was a creature of instinct. He knew she had left, and he knew it was a betrayal of his direct command. She found him in his office, a dark, solemn room filled with the ancient, musty scent of generations of alphas. He was not shouting. He was not pacing. He was simply sitting in his large, carved chair, his hands resting on the solid wood of his desk. His stillness was more intimidating than any show of force. When she entered, he didn't look up right away. He just took a slow, deliberate breath, and in that simple act she could feel his rage, a terrible, controlled fire burning just beneath the surface. "You disobeyed me," he said, his voice a low rumble. It was not a question. It was a statement of fact, a truth he had known the moment she had crossed the boundary of their land. Sarah's heart pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She had prepared for a lie, for an excuse, but in the face of his quiet disappointment, her words fell flat. She started, but she couldn't find the right words. She was a woman of logic, but this was a battle of instinct. "Your loyalties are divided, Sarah," he said, his eyes finally meeting hers. They were a piercing golden yellow, and they held not just anger but a profound sense of betrayal. "I can smell it on you. The scent of another, a human." The words were a direct hit, a final, shattering blow. He knew. Her carefully constructed life of lies and half-truths had come crashing down in a single gut-wrenching moment. A hot, defiant fury surged through her. "His name is David," she said, her voice shaking but steady. "He's a good man." Her father's face tightened, his expression a mask of pain and incomprehension. He stood, his large body a physical testament to his power. "He is a human. They are weak. They are not our kind." He looked at her, his eyes pleading, not with a daughter but with a leader. "You are my blood, Sarah. You are a leader. You will not waste your time on human follies. You will not betray your blood." The battle was no longer about her disobedience. It was about who she was. He spoke of her duty, her bloodline, her responsibility to the pack. He painted a picture of a destiny she was born for, a destiny she was throwing away for a human who could never understand her. He told her she was a leader, a mother to the next generation, a future alpha. It was a destiny that he loved, a destiny he had planned for her entire life. "I love him," she said, her voice a low, fierce whisper. "He's kind. He's good. He is my escape." Her father's face was a mixture of sorrow and rage. "You are a foolish child," he said, his voice a low growl. "He will never understand you. He will be afraid of you. You are a wolf, Sarah. You are a creature of the wild. He is a human, a creature of a house. You cannot be both." The words were a brutal punch to the gut. They hit a fear she had been trying to ignore, a fear that he was right. What would David do if he saw her in her true form? Would he run? Would he be afraid? The thought was a painful, crippling thing. But then she looked at her father's face, at the cold, hard conviction in his eyes, and she knew she couldn't give up. "I am not you, father," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "I am not a prisoner of my blood. I choose my own path. I choose my own life." Her words were a direct challenge to his authority, a defiance that was as powerful as any wolf's snarl. A dangerous, cold silence filled the room. Her father, the alpha, looked at his daughter, his heart a tangled mess of pride and fury. He loved her and he wanted to protect her. He wanted to protect her from a world that would hurt her, a world he had seen destroy their kind before. But he also saw a reflection of himself, a strong, unyielding spirit that was refusing to bend to his will. He walked to his desk and pulled out a small, worn leather pouch. He opened it, and the scent of the full moon festival, a scent of ancient ritual and raw magic, filled the air. "The festival is in 2 weeks, Sarah," he said, his voice low and final. "You will be there. You will walk in the ritual with your pack. You will do your duty. And you will not, under any circumstances, see this human again." His words were a final ultimatum, a challenge she had to face. He was not just forbidding her from seeing David. He was giving her a choice. A choice between her family and her love. A choice between her bloodline and her heart. The festival was a place of power, a place where their secrets were celebrated, not hidden. He was forcing her to face her impossible choice in the middle of a crowd, a public and dangerous place. He was forcing her to decide. And she had no idea what she was going to do. The next time she saw David, it would not be a secret. It would be an act of open rebellion. She knew with a certainty that went beyond words, that she would have to face the consequences. Chapter 7. The annual full moon festival was a celebration, a ritual, and for Sarah, a terrifying countdown to a moment of reckoning. The festival grounds, usually a place of quiet trails and ancient trees, had been transformed into a vibrant explosion of lights, laughter, and a low, primal energy. Pack members, their senses heightened by the glow of the full moon, moved through the crowd, their eyes a mixture of reverence and excitement. The air was thick with the scent of roasted meat, sweet berries, and the powerful communal musk of their kind. This was their time to celebrate their blood, their strength, their unity. It was a time to be a wolf in every sense of the word. For Sarah, the experience was a living nightmare. The full moon's light seemed to amplify every instinct, every emotion, every raw piece of her werewolf nature she had been so desperately trying to suppress. Her hearing was so sharp she could hear a moth fluttering its wings 100 yards away. The scents were a confusing, overwhelming tidal wave, a mix of human perfumes and pack scents that made her head spin. Her body felt coiled with a restless energy, a feral wild thing just beneath her skin, begging to be let out. It was a struggle to keep her human form, to walk calmly, to pretend everything was normal. Her father, the Alpha, was a constant, looming presence. He moved through the festival with an air of absolute authority, his gaze a silent, physical weight on her shoulders. She knew he was watching her, waiting for a sign of her betrayal. He had made it clear what was at stake. He had to be here. He had to do her duty. She had to be his daughter, a leader, a perfect vessel to carry on his legacy. The thought was a suffocating weight. She was standing near a large bonfire, the flames dancing and roaring, when her wolf instincts screamed. Not a scream of fear but of surprise. The scent of coffee and home of David hit her like a physical blow. He was here. Her heart, already pounding a frantic rhythm, hammered against her ribs. He had surprised her. He had come to the festival to be a part of her world. A part of a world that was about to rip him apart. She saw him through the crowd, his kind eyes scanning the faces, a gentle smile on his lips. He looked so out of place, so innocent, so terribly beautifully human. He had no idea of the danger he was in. He had no idea that the very people who were celebrating around him would turn on him in an instant if they knew he was here for her. Panic, cold and sharp, shot through her veins. He had to get to him. He had to get him out of here. But it was too late. Her father's voice, a low and dangerous growl, cut through the noise of the crowd. He hadn't said her name. He hadn't needed to. He knew. She felt his powerful instincts home in on David, on the scent of a human who did not belong. The pack, sensing their alpha's rage, grew still. A ripple of fear and anticipation ran through the crowd. Her father's eyes, now a piercing, furious yellow, were locked on David. The sight of him, a human standing in the middle of their sacred ritual, was a direct challenge to his authority, a betrayal of everything he stood for. He was a perfect, beautiful target. Her father pointed a single, trembling finger at him. "You," he said, his voice a low, terrifying growl. "You will not have her." David, confused and frightened, looked at her. He didn't know what was happening. He didn't understand the danger. He just saw the look on her face, a look of pure terror. Her father, in his fury, began to lose control. His body, already massive and coiled with power, began to shift. His muscles rippled and a low, guttural snarl escaped his lips. His rage was a dangerous living thing that was about to consume them all. The pack, sensing their alpha's fury, started to growl. They surrounded David, their eyes a menacing, hungry yellow. Sarah's heart, her wolf, her soul, it all froze in that single, terrifying moment. She was a woman of logic, but this was a battle of instinct. She had to choose. She had to make a final, impossible choice. Would she abandon the man she loved to protect herself, or would she embrace the impossible and help him? The choice was not a mental one. It was a physical, gut-wrenching decision she had to make right then, in the middle of a crowd, a public and dangerous place. She looked at her father, at the rage in his eyes. She looked at David, at the confusion and fear on his face. She had to choose. The scent of her father's fury was a suffocating thing. Her instincts, her heart, her blood, it was all screaming at her to make a choice. She had to decide. She had to face the consequences. She was no longer just a woman living a secret life. She was a woman who was in love, and she was going to fight for the man she loved. She would not abandon him. Not now. Not ever. She took a single powerful step forward, her body a living shield. The festival, the ritual, the pack. It all disappeared. There was only her. And David. And her father. The time for hiding was over. The time for fighting had begun. Chapter 8. The silence that fell over the full moon festival was more deafening than any sound. It was the hush of a crowd that had just witnessed the impossible. Sarah stood in front of David, her body a shield, her heart a frantic drumbeat against her ribs. Her father, his face a mask of rage and betrayal, was a terrifying statue of fury. His body was half-shifted, a grotesque mix of human and wolf, a terrifying glimpse of the monster he was capable of being. The pack was silent, their eyes locked on her, waiting to see what their future alpha would do. She wasn't afraid. Not of her father, not of her pack, not of the terrifying situation she was in. She was a woman of logic, but her heart was in charge now. Her love for David was a powerful, beautiful thing that was stronger than any pack law, any tradition, any command. She was ready to fight. But a fight never came. Her father's body, which had been so coiled with rage, slowly began to relax. His human form returned, his eyes, still a fierce yellow, now holding a profound sense of defeat. He looked at her, not with anger but with a heartbroken understanding. He saw that her love for a human was not a betrayal. It was a testament to her strength, a strength he had never seen before. He had tried to protect her, but she was already stronger than he ever was. He turned and walked away, his body defeated, his shoulders slumped. The pack, in a silent, collective motion, followed him. The festival was over. The battle was over. The war was over. Sarah was left standing alone with David, a man who had just seen her father, the powerful alpha of the pack, lose control. He had seen a glimpse of a world he never knew existed. His face was a mask of confusion, but his eyes, filled with a profound sense of awe, were fixed on her. He wasn't scared. Not of her, not of what he had seen. He was in awe. "Sarah," he said, his voice a low, reverent whisper. What was that?" She looked at him, and for the first time in her life she didn't lie. "I'm a werewolf, David." She told him everything, a torrent of words pouring out of her. She told him about her father, about the pack, about the pressure she was under, about her double life. She told him about the loneliness, the fear, the guilt. And she told him about the love she had for him. She waited for him to run. She waited for him to be afraid. But he just stood there, his eyes never leaving hers. When she was finished, a long, pregnant silence fell between them. Finally he spoke, his voice a quiet, gentle thing. "My grandma always told me that the soul of a person isn't in their body. It's in their heart. Your body may be a wolf, Sarah, but your heart is a human. It's the most human heart I've ever known." His words were a final, beautiful validation of everything she had ever felt. He had not only accepted her, he had embraced her. He had seen her for who she truly was, a powerful, beautiful woman who was both wolf and human. He had chosen to love her not in spite of her secret but because of it. The next day Sarah's father came to see her. He came alone. He walked into her coffee shop, a place he had once forbidden her from entering, and sat in a chair. The coffee shop was silent. He didn't speak. He just watched her. Finally he spoke, his voice a low, defeated rumble. "You were right, my daughter. Love is stronger than any law. Stronger than any tradition." He looked at her and his eyes, still a piercing yellow, held a profound sense of pride. "You have shown me a new way, a new kind of strength. You have shown me that loyalty to a person is just as strong as loyalty to a pack." His words were a final, beautiful blessing. He had not only accepted her choice, he had validated it. He had not only accepted her love, he had embraced it. He had not only accepted David, he had accepted him as part of their family. The war was over. The battle was won. And the peace that settled over them was a new kind of quiet. A quiet born of understanding and love. Sarah and David had not only found each other, they had found a new kind of home, a new kind of pack, a new kind of family. And it was beautiful. Epilogue. Few years after the chaos of the festival, the tension between the human town and the werewolf pack has settled into a new, tentative peace. A peace born of respect and understanding. David's coffee shop, which is now a bustling, popular spot for both townspeople and pack members. Sarah is no longer living a double life. She is a true bridge between the two worlds, a kind of leader in her own right. She is no longer just her father's daughter, but a woman who has forged her own path. We see a simple, loving scene of her and David together. Their love is not just a secret anymore. It is a solid, quiet foundation. David knows all of her secrets and he embraces her true nature, seeing her not as a monster but as the strong, beautiful woman he fell in love with. Sarah's father, the alpha, arriving at the coffee shop. The tension is palpable for a moment, but it quickly melts into a quiet respect. He is no longer filled with rage and disappointment but with a grudging and then genuine pride. He sees that his daughter's loyalty to David has not weakened her but made her stronger. He has learned that loyalty to a person can be just as strong as loyalty to a pack, and that love can create a new kind of family just like the one they have now. And so, as the sun sets on a new beginning for Sarah and David, we're reminded that love isn't about fitting in. It's about finding the one person you can't live without. Their journey proves that loyalty to a person can be just as strong as loyalty to a pack, and that a true home is a place where you can be your whole, authentic self. What do you think? Was Sarah right to choose David? Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments below. Your supports help bring these stories to life. If you were captivated by this story of a family feud, forbidden love, and a powerful alpha's daughter who found her own path, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. I have many more exciting werewolf romance adventures waiting for you. Ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thank you for watching.